Hi, I'm Sandi Genovese and welcome to the Scrapbook Showground. We are puzzling today. We are working with fun photo puzzles, and here is the one that we're going to actually create. I'm going to lay it down flat because sometimes the photo has some glare to it, but I am going to show you how it becomes a puzzle. Here is Addison holding her fancy-nancy fish for swimming, and I can maneuver this. If I move it in this position, now there's Quincy dressed in costume. If I move it in this position, here is sort of like a half shot. This time it's Addison in one of her baby pictures. And as I turn it, here is another option. I will move it again, another option. It is just so much fun to keep maneuvering this puzzle into all of these fun. Sometimes you'll end up with something like this, and the reason I could have decorated this as with 4 photos, but the reason it doesn't work is if I pull it down, when I'm looking at this puzzle, the flip side is this puzzle piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, let me move this and get it back into the position that will let us go back to the one, here we go. This is the one that we're going to actually start with, and that will give you an idea how you actually create this. In order to have the puzzle that's covered with photos, we have first to create the puzzle itself. So what you want to do is you want to cut out a cube, and I'm cutting it out of cardstock. What I've done is used a die cut, an Ellison die cut that cuts out each of the surfaces. Each side on this cube is 1 1/8 inch. You can cut 4 of them out of one sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. So we've created a pattern that you can download, and you can actually print it out. For the first 3 weeks that the video is free, you'll also be able to download the pattern for free. So once you actually use the pattern to be able to print it onto a nice thick cardstock, you're going to want to cut on the solid lines, and then you're going to want to fold on all of the dotted lines. So what I'm doing is, and it's actually easier if you go ahead and you score on all of those folded lines, the dotted lines. So I'm doing all of my folds in one direction. I can see I still need to fold a few more places. So I find that it's easiest first to just do all the folding, and all the folding is all done the same direction. Then there's one little tab on the end, and you want to put adhesive on that one tab, and I'm going to go ahead and when I fold it and then fold this one in and overlap, that's going to create the actual cube. And then what you want to do is, you have to close up both sides. So fold in these and fold the top over in order, push this down to get the cube on this edge, and then do the same thing with this side so that you end up with, this handy cube. Now I did them pink because it's Addison and Quincy's, like their pink and purple are their favorite colors. However, it gets so totally covered with photos that it almost doesn't matter. I've gone ahead and I've cut out, you're going to need to put together 8 of these cubes. So if you do 4 on a sheet, you'll need 2 of the cardstock sheets to create 8 of these cubes. You want to start, and you're going to put them into groups of 2. So I'm going to be using a really strong, you need something strong because this is going to get maneuvered, opened and closed and pulled in lots of different directions. So regular tape I don't think is strong enough. I'm using packing tape because it's so sturdy, and I've just cut it into little strips. However, the first time you put it together, use scratch paper and just use regular tape until you get it mastered, and make sure that you have all the steps really clear and easy. I'm going to put these 2 together, and I'll take the tape, and all I'm going to do is put the tape on one side. It's going to get covered by a photo, so how it's placed on this block doesn't matter. And I'm going to slide it until the 2 are flush. Every time you do a seam like this, you need to do the exact opposite side. So I'm going to have to turn it over. Here is the other side. Every seam has to be reinforced. That joint has to have the tape on both sides. So now you've got this side and this side. So you're going to create groups of 2. I've already created groups of 2 of all of these. So here they all are. And now you have to take the 2s and make them into 4s. But where the tape is positioned is important. So you need to take, here is the tape. You can see it, hopefully if I kind of move it around, the glare will show a little bit. The tape needs to be on the outside edges. This outside edge and this outside edge. When they're in the 2 outside edges, then you're going to come in with your tape, and in this position I'm going to go ahead and tape this. And remember, once I tape this edge, I have to flip it over and I have to do the reverse side always. So I've turned it over. Now there is the flip side to that. So if I bring it back to its original side, it's wanting to move all around. So I think I'm going to hold them into position like so with my scissors, and now bring up the other 2. Remember, these edges that are taped need to be on the outside. So here is an outside and here is an outside. When both of the outside edges, then you come back in and place the tape so that it is here. And then when you flip it over, remember you have to do that reverse joint, which is right here. So at this point, you'll have 2 groups of 4, and it does matter the position they sit in when you're going to put them together to make 8. You can see the tape on the top here. It needs to be in this outside position with these kind of loose ones in the center. And this needs to be on the other end. So you've got the whole thing together with the tapes on the ends. And if you can also see, you've got tapes on this edge here, and if I flip it around, tape on that edge there. What you want to do once it's in this position is flip the whole thing over to this side, and now I'm going to attach here and here. So I'm going to take my tape, and this time I think I'll go ahead and I will do both of these at once. But remember, I have to flip, I always have to turn it and get the joint on the other side. So let me now flip this over so that I can get the joint on this side. And oh my goodness, I need one more piece of this really strong tape. So this might not be as big a piece, but let me bring this in, and here is the final tape. So at this point, bum, ba-da-dum, you now have the actual puzzle. And the kids, to tell you the truth, have an awful good time just manipulating and having fun playing with the puzzle. However, I think it's really cool then to take this and turn this into something where you're working with photos. So I don't know if there is a particular sequence. How they move around is up to you. In this case, I can see that this is going to go into this position. So if I were wanting it to match, maybe it's this one, I'm not even sure. But in order for this to happen, you're going to use this in order to create a template. So with vellum or with tracing paper, you're going to use this completed puzzle in order to trace this surface. So what you want is to do one that has there's 2, 4, 6, 8 all stacked together. Every once in a while you're going to use just the 4, but you don't have to do a new template. You can just use a portion of it. So you'd set this down, trace around it, and then go ahead and segment so that it just matches your puzzle, because this is the guide you're going to use to be able to cut the photo into pieces. You start with a photo and maneuver it around so that you end up not cutting. You don't want to cut directly through her eyeball. You want it to be positioned like this would be a good spot, or I can move it down like this and cut. But move it around until you have it in a position where everything is going to cut nicely without cutting through something, like right through somebody's eye. And let me bring this up and I'll show you. That's what I've done here with this. So I've already gone ahead and I have cut this out so that it matches. I use this as a pattern, and you can, because you're going to do so many surfaces, I think it's easiest to take your trimmer and use this template as a guide. If I set this in my trimmer, and I did this with a piece of just construction paper first to test it. Once I have this set up, if I pull this down, you can see that the exact middle of this line is lining up with the wire, which is exactly where the blade is going to cut. So I've gone ahead then with just these are old price tags from paper because they go on and off easily. So I've used these so that I know when I place the photo that I've already trimmed to match this size. If I place this so that it is tucked against this edge here, and then if I close this up, you can see it's also tucked against this edge here, and it's tucked against the top. Now I know that if I just hold it tight in this position and go ahead and cut, it's going to give me that first cut that cuts the photo exactly into the 2 parts. Now you need to cut into the 8 parts. So I put it back into the trimmer, and I can use that same guide. If I take the top of the photo and I align it with this, or I take the bottom and I align it with this, either way, I can use that as a guide in order to go back now, and I'll start here so that you can see. So that I'm going to then cut this, and I'll pull this down to the next position. You can see why it's helpful to actually stop and take a minute to create a guide in order to be able to cut this into all of its pieces. So I now have the first 4 pieces. You do the same thing, the same exact thing with the other one, and it's helpful to reassemble it. Let me show you. I'll put this out of the way because I've gone ahead, and here is one that I've already trimmed, and I use a little bit of removable adhesive on the back just to hold it together, but put it back into its shape that it's going to be. And then it's time to go ahead and just reposition these and put them onto the actual puzzle. Once again, it's going to get handled a lot. So what I did is I used a strong adhesive. Here is double stick tape, and I'm going to use it. I'll put it on that one side, and then I'm going to put it on the other side so you have nice full coverage. You could run it through a Xyron machine. When you turn it back over, make sure that you have it in the actual correct position, as you can see here, and then go ahead and position it right on the cube. And once you have the first one, oops, it's a nice strong adhesive. So you get that on there. Then I'll just work down, although you could go in any order you want. And to make it quick, I'm going to just put 1 piece of tape on the back of each of these. You would want to put solid coverage, because remember, this is a really fun thing to play with, and it's meant to be manipulated. So you want to make sure that everything is going to stick together nicely. So do as I say, not as I'm actually doing. And then this, in this case, I need to see, wait a minute, I can't tell if I move it around. There's the correct position. So this is how this goes. Once you cut the photo into pieces, you'd be surprised how sometimes you think it should be obvious, since this is going to go there. Once you flip it over to put the adhesive on the back, it can get a little crazy. Usually though, there's one edge that it's going to fit with nicely. If you get ready, and I'm getting ready to put this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll place this in this position, and I can see that as I've put this together, that this last one has just a little bit, I'm not sure if I didn't have it tucked against the edge correctly, but I'm going to just take a little sliver off of that so that it more perfectly fits onto the cube. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. So I'll flip it over. And now it's a little bit easier to see when it matches. You can see, well, wait a minute, that doesn't work. Does that work? No. Does that work? You can maneuver it around, and sometimes this is what works. But if that's In this instance, I can tell if that isn't good enough. If you're not sure it's right, go back to your original photo and make sure that it fits together. And then you can say, okay, yep, this is the one that goes here. You know, when I'm doing these, I always say, you're going to be surprised that this is so easy. It's not that any of these steps are hard, but there are a lot of them. So give yourself a little bit of time to do this. It is well worth it. It's so much fun. And I tell you, if you do it, even for adults, and you did this, it's such a, I've done them for birthday gifts for my adult friends. And when I visit their office, I am surprised to see, oops, that's not right. I need to see where this lines up. There we go. I am surprised to see that they almost always have it sitting on their desk at work because it is such a fun thing to play with. So I'll go ahead and put the final element, and if the other side was a little bit short, this one is going to be a little bit long, and I had to trim a little bit off. This one is going to need the same sort of a trim. Oops. So place this in the final position, and you have the first section. You would then move this into another position, which if you see what I did here, I moved this into this position, and now I'm ready to take, and I would trim this photo down in order to be able to position all of these wonderful, fun, different photos that are just a great way to be able to play with the photos and to remember all the fun things that the kids have done. It's so much fun to play with the puzzle, and it's fun to flip it over and see some of the other faces that we haven't seen. This is doing the puzzle out of a cardstock cube that you've made. If you want to save steps, you can go to, I've gone to teacher supply stores, and if you look here at this colored, these were all blocks that I bought at a teacher supply. Here are wooden blocks that I bought at the craft store. Look at all the different sizes. This would make a much smaller puzzle. Here is an intermediate size. If you want a larger one than we made, they usually seem to come in groups of 9, and you only need 8, so it's perfect. Here is our wooden blocks that I got at the teacher supply that were the unpainted ones. Here's 8. Here I've gone ahead and I've put it together using the same packing tape. So you can see it works just the same. It's just that instead of having your puzzle created out of paper or out of cardstock, construction paper, whatever you choose to use, you can make it out of wood, which will make it even that sturdier. And then once you have this created, you just skip to the stage where you're decorating it with the photos directly onto the wooden pieces. You know, you're going to have so much fun playing with photo puzzles, you just might make a dozen.